Okay, hey, I just want to thank all the mayors and the champions and uh, all of the distinguished guests that have come today. I know that there's a much bigger event following this that's much more important than you looking at me talking, because you get to recognize all those great volunteers that do so much for us every single day. So I appreciate you all taking some time out just to talk to us. And I want to thank you all again for the support that you show us at Fort Campbell. It resonates over here. I can tell you that for a fact. I appreciate all the emails that you all send. I've got the command group in with me. We've got the staff behind me as well. So if there's a question that you have, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm just going to go over these slides fairly quickly. And what the intent of this is, because there's been a lot of different stories out in the media and in the news, I just want to make sure that we all give you a perspective of what we see here on the ground. As you all know, I know that it was on your minds a few days ago when we had a soldier at Fort Hood that died that had been in Liberia. So we'll spend a little bit at the very end talking about force health protection. And we'll finish with that slide. But before we get there, I just want to tell you kind of what we got tasked to do here, tell you where we're at and the progress that we made, and then we'll finish up with that force health protection. So if you go to the JFC United Assistance Campaign Plan, but what this just does is show you how we kind of broke out our mission. We got told we were going to have to do some very specific tasks. Some of that is build Ebola treatment units, train healthcare workers to fill those treatment units, sustain those treatment units, and then of course protect the force. We've been in, you see how that kind of stretched across. So those were what we call our lines of effort, and surrounding all of that is, mission command and control. That's what the division headquarters does. Just so you know, we got the Sustainment Brigade, we got the MPs, we got 86 cash from Fort Campbell. But we got engineers from Fort Hood, Fort Carson. We got folks from Fort Eustis. We got aviation unit from Fort Bliss. So this is really a joint force from across the Army, and we've been getting great support from all of them. So just so you know, that this isn't just 101st. We got a lot of folks from across the Army that are participating. If you go to the next slide, it says what we've done. So I talked a little bit about it before, Ebola treatment units. We got told we got to oversee the construction of 15 of these Ebola treatment units all across Liberia. And that we were also going to get the opportunity to sustain them. And so we did that. The last two Ebola treatment units should finish all of their construction and be completely handed over to a non-governmental organization by the end of this month. I'll tell you, when we first got here, the assessment was based on Ebola and all the work that had to be done, we might get these tasks finished from our end on the 1st of April. There was no discussion about the 101st transition into any of this. It was just get these things finished, and then we'll bring a force in behind you. Well, we're going to be done with all of those tasks by the 31st of January. So that's going to give our nation and its leadership the ability to think through what the way ahead for Liberia will be and our role in it. As you saw, healthcare worker training, we trained over 1,500. That was the 86 cash was responsible for training those. We had one fixed location at the National Police Training Center where they live, and then we also sent some mobile training teams out into the communities where these ETUs were going to be built to train the cadre there to man those Ebola treatment units that were being built. We finished that on the 31st of December, training all the healthcare workers. One of the big things that came about was the Army labs that came here. Before the laboratories came, if you took a blood sample from someone that you suspected being a patient of or being infected with Ebola, it could take up to 4 to 5 days to get that result of that blood sample. Well, because these labs are here, what used to take 4 or 5 days now takes 3 to 4 hours. And the impact that it's had has been huge on the ability to turn the corner on Ebola infection. what used to happen is if someone displayed a high fever or was vomiting, they take them right to the ETU, take their blood sample, and because the road network was so poor, go to one location. And so those 4 to 5 days that person was waiting, they may just have had malaria. But because they were sitting in an ETU with other people that were really infected, that transmission occurred. And so now what you have, I was out at the Island Clinic the other day. I was visiting our mobile lab that was out there, and they were releasing 40 people out of that ETU that just had malaria or just had the flu, but never were exposed to patients in that Ebola treatment unit because the lab was able to rapidly turn that blood sample. So that's really helped get after it as well. The other piece of the sustainment, we had to sustain with protective equipment, some of the supplies that those ETUs needed all across Liberia. We turned that over to the World Food Program on the 15th of December. So when you look at those lines that we had to do, they're complete. And we continue to support the United States Agency for International Development to continue the progress. So if you go to the next slide and say, okay, so what's that all mean? The Liberia long-term EVD trends. This is where we're at today. So you can see when we got here, sometime just after that 1 October ban, at one point they had over 82, that red line is suspected or probable, the blue line is confirmed. So those people in the ETUs that were probable or suspected, those were the ones waiting to get a blood sample result, and that blue line are those that did in fact have it. At one point, we had 82 probable or suspected patients, as well as 52 confirmed patients every single day in Liberia. Every day that happened. And at that point, the probable and suspected, about 40 to 50% of them actually had Ebola. So when you go down to where we are today, there's less than one case of confirmed, someone confirmed infected with Ebola every day in Liberia, one. And there's about 20 that are probable or suspected, but of those 20, only 1 or 2 are being confirmed with Ebola. So you look at where we were when we got here compared to where we are today, that's been some pretty good progress by the team and really everyone that's worked with the USA and the government of Liberia. So you see on the left-hand side, we first hit 10 through 12 January was the first period of time that there were no cases or new cases of Ebola in all of Liberia. So it's been a pretty dramatic change. What the 101st and its joint force partners brought was speed, flexibility, and the ability to get to places no one else could and bring capability there so that we could get our head around this problem, treat things locally to prevent people. A few months ago, you'd have a person come out of the country of Guinea and walk south across the border, because the border is porous, that had Ebola and go to Lofa province. And that one province started from that one case of somebody walking out of Guinea into Lofa and had hundreds and hundreds of confirmed cases. That was the epicenter early on. Well, then you had somebody from Sierra Leone, the country to the west, walk across the border, go to Monrovia, the capital city, and start the infection here, where there were thousands of folks infected. So what our capability of building these Ebola treatment units out in the county, one per county, has prevented people from having to walk from where they were infected all the way into the capital city and transmit that disease all the way through. That's why you see with the labs, with the ETUs and the healthcare workers, and some of the work the government of Liberia has done, why you see that trend line going in the positive direction. So that's the so what of what your division's done. So you'll say, okay, that's great. Today is, middle of January. So what you're telling us all the great things that have happened. What's next? Go to the next slide. So where we are today, we believe, and our assessment has been, we've accomplished the task that we've been given to do by our nation, and so we're ready to transition. And the plans as they currently stand are, we transition with the 34th Infantry Division, who's been announced to come and be our backfill, and we work that piece for April, and we continue to get after the remaining piece of Ebola in Liberia. There is a course of action that says, hey, because the situation is much, much better than we anticipated, we have nobody backfill you, and the 101st turns the lights off. So there is no backfill. So the thing the chairman talked about, a 6 month, 6 month, 6 month rotation, it's all done in the first 6 months. The third one is we could have to expand our response. We are below where the Ebola trend line was in August. Just so to give you some historical perspective, this is the second Ebola outbreak Liberia's had in about a calendar year. The first one was about March, early February, March. It had a spike, and they thought they got their head around it, and it dropped. And in the end of July, it was about 1 case, 2 cases maybe. Well, they didn't keep after it, and so then it spiked dramatically up to the numbers I talked about earlier. So what we're worried about is all of the things that have been put into place. People get complacent, they start not taking the preventative measures, and it could spike again. And that's what everybody is worried about, that this great 1 case a day could rapidly go to 30 or 40, which would be a requirement for us to get re-engaged. Or Sierra Leone and Guinea, who have much worse conditions at EVD than we do here in Liberia, we could be tasked, hey, go support Ebola efforts in one of those 2 countries, if not both. So we've done planning for all 3 of these, and we have done a briefing to AFRICOM, our higher headquarters. They've gone to Washington, D.C., and they've been meeting over the last 3 days to determine, hey, what is the way ahead for Liberia? So we're waiting on a decision. And we think that decision is going to be made sometime between now and the 25th or 26th of January. And then when they make that decision, we'll clearly tell you what that decision is. I fully expect that we'll redeploy some people in February because their mission's done and we don't need them right now to do what we have remaining if we get told to do one of these missions. So you saw about 450 people come home earlier. That's because we brought more people originally than we needed based on the capabilities we found in Liberia. So that's why you saw them come home, and they're in control monitoring now. I think the first cohort gets out about the 22nd. So the 1st of February, you'll see another a group of people, the 1st and 2nd, come back so that we can continue to right-size the force and only keep the people here that we need to accomplish the mission. So that's where we're at. But under any of those 3 courses of action, you can expect to see the division redeploying between March and early May. Okay, so go to the next slide, please. So we told you what our mission was, we told you what our lines of effort are, but the first and #1 priority for us has always been protecting the force. And as you know, we've sent some soldiers back on emergency leave, on medical evacuation for medical issues, and knock on wood, none of them have come up with any indications of infection. Even the soldier that passed away at Fort Hood was determined not to have Ebola. So we are, I will tell you, very, very focused on ensuring that soldiers adhere to all of the protection measures we put into place. And we demand and hold our leaders accountable for that. So what have we done, as you see on this slide? Individual leader action, daily temperature checks. You've heard us say it before. Everybody gets their temperature checked here twice. If it spikes above 100.4, they go right into isolation. We've had the opportunity, frankly, to rehearse that with some people that had the flu. They got to go into the timeout box and sit there, get their temperature checked. We did a blood test, took it to the lab. They came back negative. So we've had the opportunity to do that early on once or twice. But we've continued to beat these force health protection measures to all of our soldiers. We keep a log of their temperatures so that we know from the day they got here until whenever we're done what their trend line has been. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Ebola, it's similar to HIV. You have to exchange body fluids to get it. So standing and talking to somebody 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet away, that's why you'll see if you go to an ETU, there's a 2-meter gap to prevent that space and any exchange of bodily fluids. So just being in Liberia at Barclay Training Center does not increase your risk of getting Ebola, because we're very self-contained and we don't have anybody anywhere near any infected patients or working in an infected in an area where there are patients there. So you look at no contact or treatment of patients. We've said that. We're taking our Malarone. Malaria is a bigger killer in Liberia than Ebola is. In fact, people throw around the last time the Marines were here, 30% of their force came down with malaria. So we are as focused on preventing malaria as we are on Ebola. Medical protocols you see, and then redeployment. So what we do there as well. So I am doing everything, we are all doing everything we can to make sure that the soldiers are maintaining their focus on staying healthy so our families are safe when we come back. So that's really it in a nutshell, kind of a one over the world. Again, I appreciate all the support from the people back home, and we are ready to take your questions. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. This is Colonel Dollinger. I'm on the far edge of the screen, and we've got our Facebook set up, and we started to take a few questions. But at this point, is anyone in the audience prepared to make a statement or ask a question? So I've looked at while people are thinking about that or maybe getting their wits about them. Could you cover, if there's been recover if necessary, the controlled monitoring policy? And if there's been any changes, or do you expect any changes about controlled monitoring?
Yeah, thanks for the question. When you leave here, the second those wheels go off the ground, your control monitoring period starts, and it's a 21-day process. So you'll go to 5 locations potentially. You got Fort Eustis, or JBLM Eustis, JBLM Accord, Bragg, potentially Hood, and Bliss. Those are the 5 control monitoring areas. So we've got folks, will probably be, JBLM and Fort Bliss, for example, for Fort Campbell soldiers. So you're going to go there, you land, they take you right to the area that they're going to monitor you in, and they keep you pretty much isolated in that area. They feed you. There's MWR capabilities, so our soldiers are able to talk to their families. We're giving them some Army training tasks they have to do to keep them a little bit occupied and getting ahead on the training requirements that they'll have to accomplish when they get back to home station. We're doing some medical training. Some kids are doing civilian online classes, going to college. And it's really a time for them to reset. We want to get them to do some of these SRP kind of tasks. So once we get back to Fort Campbell, it goes faster through that reintegration process. Because we want all of them to come back and be able to take leave. That's what the big focus is for us. The OSD or DOD is looking at reevaluating the policy. Don't know if they're going to do that or what the results will be, but we're planning on spending 21 days at another location other than here, getting our feet back under us once we depart Liberia. Over.
Roger, sir. So I'm gonna just clarify what you said. Is that right now there is the questions that seem to be approaching us are: is there anybody that's not going to do the 21-day control monitoring process as of current policy right now? Over.
Well, I will tell you, the folks that go on emergency leave, as they come through, they've not gone to uncontrolled.
Excluding the emergency leave situation, so we're talking about for the mass.
Oh yeah, we're all going to
right now.
Yeah, we're going to control monitoring.
Roger, sir. Just wanted to clarify that. Just seems to be that was a lot of the questions on Facebook. We're driving towards that there's been a change in policy, and I think we're going to report back to all those folks that it's still 21 days.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Hey Buck, if we hear any different, we'll let you know. You'll be the second one to know if I can beat the families from their soldier calling them. Now let's just say, for example, it does get lifted, and I'm just going to hypothetically just say, let's pretend it does. We had a soldier, as you recall, that was going back on emergency leave, and his family didn't feel comfortable with him coming back. So what I've told General Stammer is, we need to have an area that if a family member decides, hey, I'm just not comfortable with it, if my wife says I'm not ready for Volesky to come home yet, he needs to take a 21-day timeout because I want to feel a little more comfortable, then they're going to put me somewhere. But what we need to make sure we educate our families on is, hey, when we come home, we're going to make sure that their soldiers are healthy, and we'll take all the precautions. But if that thing is lifted, we'll make sure if a family member is not comfortable, we'll take those precautions, because the most important thing for our families is that they're comfortable and confident in their safety for them and their families as well as their soldiers. Does that make sense?
I'm sure that makes sense, and thanks for that assurance. And I think our community leaders, we feel good about that as well. Any other any questions at all from the group? Open mic. Sir, so we've probably got about 40 family members here. If there's any other than the presentation that you gave, is there any messages to the family members and to FRGs and FRSA network that you would like to relay?
I would just tell them that, again, you heard me start and say I thank them for their support. As you'll hear me tell everybody, this division, I got asked the other day about, well, when you guys get back, you'll be able to take leave and, relax because you'll have got a deployment under your belt. I remind them really quickly that this division was only back from Afghanistan 7 months, and we deployed to Liberia, and that the division answers our nation's call. We couldn't do that without our families and our great communities. And without their support, we couldn't do what we do today. And I laid that out to them and said, let's just look at what the 101st is doing today. You've got 2 brigades, 2nd Brigade and 159 that just got back from Afghanistan. 1st Brigade's in Afghanistan. 3rd Brigade's getting ready to go. The 101st Combat Aviation Brigade will follow. And you got the division headquarters in the Sustainment Brigade with other folks from Fort Campbell in Liberia today. That's an example of what we're doing. So we couldn't do it without our families. And I tell you, if there's any issues the families have, please let us know, and we'll try to alleviate any of your concerns. Anybody else in here? Everything? I just got a call or a question. It's a great one. It says, how come there's still 1 case per day? Why is it not going to 0? That's a great question. Let me paint the picture of Liberia for you. They call it the forest here. We call it a jungle. It is triple canopy from the time you leave Monrovia. As I fly over, it takes about, to go to all 4 corners, I'll say 3 because we're on the coast. To get to the northern portion of Liberia, it takes 1 hour and 18 minutes to fly to Voinjama. And from about 10 minutes outside Monrovia, it is just jungle. It takes about another 2 hours to go west and 2 hours to go east. That's kind of a helicopter flight of how far it is in Liberia. So you've got these cases. The Monrovia is a city of a few million. And so the only way you really get after the Ebola is when somebody has it, you do what they call contact tracing. And you go and ask, okay, who have you associated with? And they go and try to find all these people to see if they're infected so they can break the transmission cycle. So that's one piece, trying to find out who all this person has interacted with. And to give you a scale, they had an imam die. They moved his body through the streets to his funeral. That resulted in 2,000 contacts they had to go find. Now figure what it would be like just to find 2,000 people at Fort Campbell. Now put that in areas all across Liberia. So that's challenging. The second piece is the cultural norms here are a little different than what we're used to. When someone dies, they wash the dead body, they touch the dead body. Well, that's the time when the body's most infectious. And so some of these cultural practices out in the rural areas haven't been changed yet. And so part of the strategy is to find out where these outbreaks are out in the hinterland, fly a capability and isolate it before it can start coming into the major urban areas. So that's the challenge with getting to 0. It is easier to get from 50 to 10 cases a day than it will be to go from 10 to 0.
Right, sir. Mayor Hendricks from Hopkinsville has a question.
Sir, it's more of a comment than a question. I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of our community for the information you're providing today and this opportunity. It certainly will help us provide any further communication that we can to allay any concerns or questions that our community members may have. And I'm sitting beside Mayor Jim Dirt as well from Montgomery County, and I know he feels the same way. We just want to tell you how much we appreciate you taking time to include us in this conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate you both coming. What I'd really appreciate you do, though, is putting your arms around Mark Stammer and Buck and Jeff Yeager and the team back there. Because I'll tell you, without them taking care of it, there you go. Hug it out. Hug it out. You got to hug it out. Because they keep us straight over here. They allow us to be able to focus and get after the results you saw because they got our backs back there, and so do you. So thanks for what you do for us and being great supporters of us over here.
Sir, one question from the audience, and I'm not familiar with this piece of equipment, but are the soldiers wearing a tracker? And are they wearing trackers, and what's that for?
Yeah, but we have, well, everybody's not wearing a tracker. I wish I could get everybody to wear a tracker, especially my DCGS. I don't know where he's flying to half the time. No, he's taking care of me, actually. We do. We have trackers like when we put somebody out on the street, we put a tracker in the car so we can find out where they're at in case they get in an accident. If you think it's tough driving in places like New York or some Los Angeles, I'd ask you to please come here. My wife, I compared to what my wife said about her visit to Korea. She said when you hit an intersection, you just lay on the horn and the biggest vehicle gets to pass. It's a nightmare. We don't have U.S. soldiers, by and large, driving any vehicles. It's all local nationals because we would be in a constant state of accident. So our worry is some soldier gets in an accident, I can look right there, I get a call. I don't need to figure out where they're at. I know where they're at. I get a medevac there, or I get a ground element right to that point of location as soon as we find out about it. We got trackers on our helicopters. I had to do a precautionary landing for a maintenance issue. The jock knew the second that helicopter landed where I was, knew where the QRF had to go. We got 15 helicopters flying every single day. So that's what it is really to ensure that if somebody gets into an incident, I don't have to ask them, hey, where are you? We know where they're at. We can give them the assistance they need.
Sir, another question from the audience. We want to discuss a little bit about how soldiers are assigned duties. And even though some may be operating outside of their primary task, and how is that getting managed in terms of security and other details?
Hey, this is Sergeant Major. Really, the soldiers get assigned tasks based on the force protection that we have to maintain over here. And really, the guard duty is something that all the soldiers have to do. It isn't specifically an MOS specific, but it's all geared around keeping us safe and healthy over here.
And as you know, Buck, we don't have a lot of 11 Bravos that came over here. We didn't deploy any of our BCTs. We came with, engineers, doctors, aviators, but force protection and entry control points are everybody's job. And so if somebody says, hey, I'm a cook and I'm pulling gate guard, well, yeah, that's what everybody gets the opportunity to do. In fact, I think I actually saw the SJA pulling gate guard over New Year's Eve. So I appreciate that, Judge. So that's what we're doing. And again, as you see us send people home, it's because there's not a mission or a task for them to accomplish. And we don't want hundreds of soldiers just sitting around doing nothing.
Thanks, sir. I think that got exactly to the intent of that question. Thanks, Sergeant Major. another question, I believe this one came off Facebook. And I know you touched on it a bit, sir, but can you expand a little bit about a drawdown concept? Everybody's interested in that, or maybe there's not been enough decisions made at this point, but would you like to address how a drawdown could occur between, I believe it's the zero option, how that would play out based on what you think you can share for the group forward?
Well, there haven't been any decisions made yet. But what I will tell you is, people think that if there is a zero option, we'll get to come home faster. What I would tell you is we got bases that we've got to close. I mean, unlike Iraq or Afghanistan, where your guy came in and he took over that base, well, there's nobody to replace us, which means all the infrastructure we put up and all the property that we got to dispose of that. We got to turn it over, pack it all up. So if there's no follow-on force, we got to close every base. If there is a follow-on force, based on what the size determination is, they may not need all of this structure that we have. So we're going to have to tear down things and close that as well. So whatever the decision is, we'll execute with vigor. But I don't want people to think that there's a zero option. We're coming home tomorrow. You can only take, infrastructure down so quickly based on the capabilities you have in country. And we're relying a lot on contracted support to do that. And I'll give you an example. They just educated me. We're living in force provider 150s. Those are packages that can house 150 soldiers in tents with laundry and bath. How long does that take to get down? 10
days for 150.
10 days. 10 days. We got about 2,000 people here. So that's 10 days per each 150 force provider. And how many can we do simultaneously, Frank?
Right now, 1 per location, and it's going to go to 2 per location simultaneously. So
we can do about 2 per location simultaneously, which means I can't just unplug it and watch everything collapse when we go home. And so we're not going to be able to put everybody on a plane right away. Does that make sense?
Roger, sir. Again, I think that answers the question sufficiently. Okay. I just got a question handed to me, but I would ask you if you want to comment. We've passed a big milestone here at Fort Campbell with 101 days of no DOD fatality. And I would ask if you want to make any comments about that to this group. I'll sort of get my head around this new question.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say a comment that no one here is going to like. I think I'm going to stay in Liberia because it seems like all the good stuff happens when I'm away. You know what I mean? I get there and we can't get past 15 days, and I leave and we're already past 101. So what I tell you is 202 is a great number too. So let's see if we can get there. But that's a great testament to the leadership and really our soldiers embracing what we were calling force protection. It isn't about safety, it's about protecting the force. And I appreciate the families getting after it too, because I'll tell you, I know that my biggest checker is my wife, and she's making sure I'm tracking. So I hope all the other families are doing the same thing for their soldier. But keep up the great work.
Thanks, sir. We had a question on Facebook. We've got a lot of units over there, but how about individual augmentees, and how are they being managed, and how will they be informed of their release? Or I'm not sure. A lot of individual augmentees question refer to individual augmentees.
Yeah, they're going to go back and with their units. That's all right. They're going to go back with their units. Yeah, I was just checking with our G1. They'll go back with their unit, that unit, will they not? Come on up here and tell me how they'll go back. I'll have my G1 answer that one.
Yes, sir, this is Major Khan. Sir, I will slow down. Mainly they will go back to control monitoring with the unit, and then they will revert back to the parent unit once they finish control monitoring. But as of right now, all the individual augmentee will go with CMA, with the mainly LEC cache that have most of them. This includes Air Force, Navy, and individual mentee office doctors that came here with them, sir.
So once they get through their 21-day monitoring with that cohort they flew with, that senior commander at that installation works those transportation modes for that cohort. So for the folks we have at Fort Bliss, we have nothing to say about that. That's done by General Twitty, and the team at Fort Bliss get all of those folks together, and they get them to their final points of destination. So that's how the individual augmentees will roll out of a CMA. Does that make sense?
Sir, can you tell me what that acronym CMA means?
Controlled Monitoring Area.
I got it. Okay, so we're tracking all that, and I think we can answer the question on that. Any questions from the group here?
Well, good. I don't like looking at people watching paint dry. You know what I mean?
No, sir.
I tried to shame Donna in asking a question. It was to no avail, sir.
Sir, we've got all of the Facebook questions are coming up that are all information that you covered.
Okay.
So we're armed with everything we need to continue to answer. It looks like all the information sort of anticipated it. The questions are anticipated, and so we're just answering them out as they come up. Nothing that you have not already covered to this point. Over.
Okay, well, then I'd like to thank again all of you for coming. I know you got another function to go, and just I'd ask you all to put your arms around those volunteers as well. Looking forward to seeing you when we get back to Fort Campbell. I will tell you, you know, the summertime is a-coming. We're going to have some transitions that are going to occur. So I'd ask us to make sure that, you know, that as we start looking at units back at Fort Campbell, Mark, that our transition plans are solid. You know, I want to plug in on VTCs as much as I can that makes sense to you on, you know, telling people, or at least get a phone call into folks that are transitioning. But, you know, let's make sure we got a good tight piece on that and we get everybody integrated. But I appreciate all you all do. Any save rounds? Any save rounds from here?
Sir, we got one burning question. I think I know what the answer is. Who's your Super Bowl pick? You know, I think it's the Packers. Go Hawks!
All I got to say, yeah, I just say that, you know, don't hate the player, hate the game. Go Pack, go! They're like, who? All right, be good.
All right, sir.
We'll see y'all later. Have a great evening.